What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with a subscriber Q&A video. I received lots of great questions and comments over the last week or two as a result of my TVC giveaways, and I wanted to put together kind of a video that covers a number of different questions that you guys brought up. We're going to talk about the Morphy auctions for some rare finds. There was a huge kind of warehouse find of mint on card Star Wars figures that are going up for auction at the beginning of February. I'm going to talk briefly about that and just some other general questions about grading. How do you find the best offer accepted? I keep getting that question, so I'm going to run through it one more time. Some differences between the Kenner 12 backs. Talk about trading cards, comics, just all over the map. And thank you guys so much for entering the giveaways and for all the great questions. Let's dig right in. Okay, the first one is from Viker77. Could you go over how to get the best offer accepted price for an eBay buy it now best offer listings that don't show on eBay? I heard you mention it once, but I couldn't get the search on that website to work. Now, sometimes it doesn't work, but I've gone through this before, but I'm going to show you guys right now just really quickly where to go for this. And I'll put a link for all of the exterior type of articles that I'm talking about. I'll put that in the video description so you guys can go back and check it out for yourself. The website I use is 130point.com, and this was pointed out to me by Patreon supporter Barry S. So thank you to Barry for that. Now, if you go to 130point.com, this is what pulls up. This is their main page. And what you want to do is you want to click on this search bar that says Search eBay Sales. So click on that, and then this will pop up. And this is the new search kind of thing that they use. Now, in this search box where your cursor automatically goes to, copy and paste the listing description, the listing title on the eBay for the item that you're looking for. So if it's a best offer accepted on a Star Wars Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight and you're trying to find the price, whatever the listing title is, copy and paste that into this search bar, and then you hit submit. And after that, it'll pull up, just check the photo to make sure it's the correct item that was in the original eBay listing, and it'll pop up with the best offer that was accepted. This website seems to go down occasionally though, so it doesn't always work. It also doesn't always work for international sales, although 130point.com has added that information for sales in Europe or Canada or wherever else, but just sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's a little bit wonky. Sometimes you got to just copy and paste part of the listing title for it to show up. But just be patient and check it out and play with it a little bit. But that's how you do it. You go to 130point.com, click on the search eBay sales mechanism, and that'll take you to this search bar. And you put in, you copy and paste the eBay listing and then hit submit, and it'll pop up with the item as well as the best offer that was accepted for that item. So good luck with that. Next up, Jeff Moore asks, I'm new to vintage mock collecting. How do you tell the difference between A, B, or C 12 backs? And he's talking about 12 backs. And there's a great link that I'll put in the video description again that says Star Wars Variations. Ever wondered what the difference is between your A, B, and C 12 backs? Well, here's your answer. This is very detailed. It's very clear. And the key relates to this top part related to the saber, how to work the lightsaber. And the early 12-back A, as it's shown here, has a short, stubby saber right there, along with this wording right below it. So that's how you tell that that's a 12-back A. If it has this wording and it has the very, very short saber, that's the 12-back A. The 12-back B, it shows the saber slightly extended, and this is related to the double telescoping sabers that appeared on early 12-backs, as well as I believe on some 12-back Cs. But the 12-back B will have the exact same wording right here, along with the saber tip slightly pulled out. And the 12-back Cs will have shortened wording right here. So you'll see the wording is a little bit shortened. Pull saber out by tip or push saber out using slide lever. So that's the shortened version versus the 12-back A and B will have slightly longer wording there. Along with, on the 12-back B, the slightly longer saber tip versus the 12-back A, which is a very, very short tip. So that's how you tell the difference. Again, I'll put a link to this in the video description so you can take a closer look at it. But that's how you tell the basic difference between a 12-back A, B, and C. Next up, Joe Rice, he asks, do you keep track of the overall value of your collection? How often do you determine the value of my collection? with prices in a weird state of flux, I would imagine it's a good thing. Yeah, I think it's a good thing to have a spreadsheet with what you paid for the item, what you think the market value is. I've got kind of a general contents policy as part of my homeowner's insurance, and it covers all of my items under a general umbrella. And I think that the total value that I put on mine is way more than what the actual market value is. Now, if I ever bought a single item worth more than $20,000, I have to specifically declare that as part of a separate policy. I am not made of money. I do not have any items in my collection that are singular worth $20,000. I just don't have that kind of collection. My collection is kind of a mid-range collection, I would call it, where the most of the items are worth anywhere from $100 to, maybe a couple $1,000. So I don't need a specific policy just for one item. But if I owned, let's say, a rocket-firing J-slot prototype Boba Fett that goes for $150,000 to $200,000, you better believe I'm going to have a separate policy just for that item in the event of loss in a fire or other catastrophe or theft. But do I keep a separate spreadsheet for all of my items? Not really. I mean, I wish I did, but I'm too lazy to do it at this point, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own with my collection that I haven't done it. Do I have a general idea of what each item's worth? Yeah, I do. But if you're starting from the beginning, or if you have a small enough collection that you don't mind taking the time to put together a spreadsheet, I would recommend it. It probably makes sense. My YouTube channel and my Instagram page basically serve as my spreadsheet. I mean, I can go back and reference everything in my collection. Obviously, I've sold off a lot of them, especially the modern stuff here lately. But I do think it's a good idea. I know that Chris W. over at Rogue 5 Toys, he's got a notebook where he's handwritten the values that he paid for each specific item so he can keep track of it. And he said it's a lot of fun to go back and see what he paid for an item 7 or 8 years ago versus what it's worth now. And certainly anything that you bought that long ago has really gone up in value. But we are in a weird state of flux with prices right now, and it's just a good idea to keep track of what you have for insurance purposes. U137556, I believe that's Michael A., who's a Patreon supporter. He says, John, with AFA pausing their loose grading, should we expect to see loose, ungraded items lower in pricing on eBay, since grading those items has become limited to CAS and UKG? And that's a good question. I don't know the answer. I kind of talked about that when I announced the news from AFA. I think that there is a possibility that very near mint plus condition, loose, ungraded items could see a flattening or a decrease in price. Because if I'm a collector of loose figures and I don't like to get stuff graded, then why not get something that's 75 or 80 grade condition versus 90 grade condition? Because the prices are probably going to be less. And I think what you'll see is that the items that are ungraded, but in kind of 85 plus to 90 grade condition, I think you'll see those pull back a little bit over the course of this year. Now, loose graded in high grade condition, I expect the opposite. As inventory dries up, AFA is stopped grading loose graded figures. So, the amount of inventory that's going to be listed on eBay, I expect to drop pretty dramatically 6 to 9 months from now. And I think we'll see the prices for those items go up. Maybe I'm wrong, though. We'll see. But I've been wrong before. I'm sure I'll be wrong again, but it's a great question. And only time will tell as the inventory on eBay and on Facebook and everywhere else where you see stuff for sale of loose graded figures, as that inventory dries up, supply dries up. It's supply and demand, simple economics. I think that we'll see an increase in the price of loose graded figures and either a flattening or potentially even a decrease in the price of loose near mint plus ungraded figures. We'll see. We'll see. Because there are some collectors that don't mind AFA versus UKG versus CAS. If I get a loose figure that is really mint and I want to get it graded, I don't mind sending it to CAS. I don't use UKG, obviously, just because they're overseas. But there are some collectors that don't want to have anything but AFA figures in their collection. And with the supply of those dropping for loose graded figures as we head into later 2023, there could be a pretty significant jump in those prices for loose, high-grade figures. We shall see. Anthony5816, he says, love the channel and always looking forward to the next episode. Being a new collector starting with loose original, is it wise to grade mint loose figures? if you're in the hobby just to enjoy it. And that kind of piggybacks off the last question. I think if you're in the hobby just to enjoy collecting, there's no need to start grading your own figures. You can certainly get graded figures that are already graded on eBay or Facebook or everywhere else. But if you're just in it to collect and you want to have a nice loose collection, try and get the full run or whatever it is that you're doing, maybe you collect variants and you don't care about grading, you're not into grading figures, then I don't think now's a really good time to start, because prices have gone up over at CAS. CAS increased their loose grading prices twice. Once at the end of November, and then another time after AFA announced that they're stopping loose grading. UKG has obviously got a big backlog. CAS is working through their backlog, and it's pretty good right now, 4 to 5 months. But with AFA stopping their grading, I don't know if now's a good time to start loose grading figures. I think now's a good time to just enjoy a loose collection. Or if you like graded figures, go ahead and buy them already graded so you know exactly what you're getting, and you don't have to wait the 5 to 6 to 9 months for those items to turn around, either at CAS or UKG. Next up, Michael Faber. He asks, not sure if you have any more details than we do, but any news on other tiers opening up, new memberships, or overall changes to AFA submissions? Well, I did cover the fact that they're not grading loose graded figures anymore. They're putting a halt to that. I posited the idea that AFA may never bring back loose grading figures. Who knows if I'm right on that. I think the profit margins on loose grading is pretty slim, even with the prices where they are at CAS. AFA clearly has a huge backlog they want to work through. In terms of other tiers, I do not expect the economy tier for packaged items to ever come back. It's going to be what they are now. I don't ever expect them to get back to any cheaper than what they are right now. AFA did say that they do have a new website kind of coming, that new memberships will come. The population report will kind of come back so we can see how many items are graded and at what grade at AFA. But all of these are to be coming. AFA takes forever to do this stuff. They work on their own schedule. So I wouldn't expect it to be anytime soon. But I think now that with AFA stopping loose grading, at least temporarily, as they say, that maybe opens up some more bandwidth to improve their website, improve the ordering process, to add back in memberships and the population report tracking. All of that stuff could come back. It's just a matter of when, but I would be patient on that, and I just would not expect it anytime soon. Next up, Seth Waldrop, he asked, from what I learned about grading companies, AFA, CAS, and UKG, AFA has the strictest criteria for grading their figures. CAS tends to grade their figures the most accurately based on condition. UKG tends to grade their figures 5 points above AFA and CAS. In your opinion, would you agree? I would not agree with some of this. I think that AFA is the gold standard for grading. I agree with that. They have the strictest criteria. I think that they're overly harsh, especially on modern mint on card like TVC. I think that they're way too harsh on those. I think that they're fairly accurate, if not too harsh, on loose graded vintage figures. I think that they're very accurate on Kenner mint on cards. I just got back my 45 back Hoth that came back exactly where I expected it to come back. I do think that CAS and UKG are about the same. I just think for loose grading and even for mint on cards, they're about the same in terms of how they grade. They're always about 5 points above AFA, but I don't think CAS is not 5 points above AFA. I think they're definitely 5 points above. UKG, I would agree, is usually 5 points above. Sometimes UKG grades a little too fast and loose, in my opinion. I think the same for CAS. Sometimes they grade pretty fast and loose. But in general, I don't have a problem at all. You know what you're buying, and the price reflects that. A CAS 85 and a UKG 85 are not going to sell, in general, for the same price that an AFA 85 sells for. And that's because AFA's got stricter grading standards. But I think that all three companies are great. I own graded figures, both mint on card as well as loose graded for both. For all three grading companies. I think they're all great. They just all have their strengths and weaknesses. But I do think that CAS and UKG are about the same, in my opinion, in terms of how they grade. Sophia Studios asks, do you keep your collection in a temperature-stable room? I've always wondered how big collectors maintain and preserve their things. I'm not a big collector. I'm really not. I've seen some collections on Facebook from many dozens, if not hundreds of collectors that blow my collection out of the water. So I don't consider myself a quote-unquote big collector. I'm just like you guys. I just try to add stuff as I can and as my money allows it. But I do keep my room fairly temperature controlled. It's my collection room. It's my man cave. I watch football here. I hang out with friends here. So it's not like it's 60 degrees in here. I try to keep it about 70 degrees, 68 to 72, somewhere in that ballpark. It just depends on the time of year. But I'm not super strict about it. I don't have like a dehumidifier in my room, but my room is fairly dry. It's not anywhere near water sources. But in general, yes, you should probably temperature control your room. These blisters are going to yellow over time is my guess. A lot of these figures that are even graded are probably going to yellow a little bit, but I'm going to enjoy them while they're still in good condition. But in general, I have not noticed any kind of problems with mine. I've never noticed any blisters falling off the card or anything like that. But I imagine it could happen at some point. I'm not particularly worried about it, but I do try to keep the temperature low and reasonable, and just stay away from extremely cold and extremely hot, and you'll be okay. I also do have blinds, as you can see right here on these oversized skylights, sky windows. I have like 85% UV tinting on the windows, and that's probably as far as I'm going to go with it. Next up, I have a question from FNU LNU. Thanks for the video. Appreciate them as always. Are grails a collector's personal decision, or is there a universally understood list of characters that fall under that category? I think that there's a universal list of mint on cards that are very hard to find, maybe one of 5. Like, I consider a grail to be the 31 back A Empire Strikes Back Bosk. That's the true debut card for him, but there's less than a handful of those that exist. I consider the Toxic Limbs Pac Spanish Bosk to be a grail because that's pretty universally understood as tough to find and is very expensive and very rare. But there's also what's called personal grails. There's personal grails versus universally accepted grails. I've got a number of personal grails in my collection, like the R5D4 Red Bar, a number of bootlegs in my collection that are very rare that no one else cares about except bootleg collectors. I consider those to be personal grails. So it just depends, but I wouldn't get caught up in it. I wouldn't worry about it. I consider a number of my comic books to be personal grails, like my Clone Wars #1, like my Heir to the Empire #1. There's quite a number, there's hundreds of those on the CGC census in a 9.8 grade, but I consider those to be personal grails because I really wanted them in my collection. And while they are expensive, they're not very rare. So, the rarity and what you consider to be your personal grail is two totally different things. A lot of the stuff that I consider to be personal grails are not particularly rare. So, but a great question. Next up, I got a question that says, do you think the vintage collection Slave 1 Leia on the Revenge back with no offer is the best one to get? Thanks for the great videos. I think this is a good question because we see the prices all over the map depending on if it's the Revenge of the Jedi Leia, Slave Leia, with the paperwork and the offer sticker versus the one without, which came in the SDCC kind of box set that is offerless and doesn't have any paperwork inside the blister. I consider that one to be the best, probably along with the Canadian version, either retail or the SDCC. There is an SDCC offerless Canadian version of VC64 Slave Leia. I think all three of those are probably my big three. The US card back offerless, the Canadian offerless, and then the Canadian with the offer, the retail release. I think all three of those are the best, but really all of them are really nice. I mean, it just depends on condition, but I like that offerless look. It just looks gorgeous. If you get an unpunched offerless Revenge of the Jedi VC64 Slave Leia, you're doing pretty well. I don't have one of those in my collection, although it certainly would be nice. Next up, Ketbag, he says, what figure do you have the most of? I know you're a keen Cloud Car Pilot collector. My collection's really weird. I probably wouldn't mimic me in terms of how I collect, but I've got the most loose graded of Darth Vader. I've got like 21, I think, of them between bagged and bootlegs and licensed figures, all loose graded for Darth Vader, as you guys see in a number of my videos, my unboxing videos. I've got maybe 12 Farm Boys. I've only got one mint on card Vader though, and I have 0 Farm Boy mint on cards. In terms of my mint on cards, my most would be Bosk. I've got 8 of those so far. But I do have certain characters that I like. I like character focuses, focuses, because I don't have the room to collect every single mint on card. And I don't have the money either. So I tend to collect certain characters. Death Star Droid is another one. I've got 6 or 7 of those. Cloud Car Pilot, Bosk. Those are probably my big 3. But I certainly have other characters where I've got 2 or 3 or 4 different mint on cards for. And it's just a fun way to collect. It's kind of an alternate way to collect when you are tied up on money and space. And I've got problems on both of those. But that's a great question. Next up, Review Man 11. He says, what original Kenner items are you hoping to add to your collection in 2023? And as I've already talked about during my 2022 year in review videos, I don't have a huge list of items I'd like to get. I would like to get an Empire Strikes Back Clear Blister Han Hoth. I would like to get a Clear Blister Return of the Jedi R5-D4. In terms of my mint on cards, I'm not going to get a lot of mint on cards this year. I just don't have the funds, and I expect it to be a pretty down year for me in my job in real estate. In terms of loose graded figures, I don't have a big list, but I wouldn't mind getting like a Hollow Cheeks Tusken Raider, which I did bid on here recently and lost very quickly because the price just went stratospheric on it. There's a few others here and there, but nothing crazy. I wouldn't mind getting a few other kind of mint on cards that maybe would be a fun fit. I would like a 48 back Revenge of the Jedi Luke Hoth with a clear blister. That would be another one I'd like to get. So I don't have any specific kind of firm goals, but I'm just going to try and take it as I see it and as prices dictate maybe what my budget is. And, if prices continue to stay relatively high, I would expect to get maybe 5 to 6 mint on cards and maybe 5 to 10 loose graded figures and call it a day and be happy with that. There's a few comic books I'd like to get and maybe some trading cards. So it's going to be a pretty slow year for me in terms of collecting is my guess. Joshua3732 asks, do you think comic prices will start to go up again after the end of the recession, or do you think prices are where they should be? Is this a price correction following the comic boom of 2021 or just the result of the economy? Great question. I think comic book prices are not going to move that much. They're just not. I mean, there's just too much good content out there between Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Wars, Disney Plus content. There's a new show that seems to come out every 2 or 3 months, and comic book collectors cannot keep up with it. And the modern releases just seem flat. No one seems to care. There are certain key books that have gone way down in price, 30 to 50%, as I've talked about in past market update videos, as well as in my comic book collecting unboxings. To me, I think that the prices are probably where they should be. If we have a firm, confirmed recession in 2023, they might even dip a little bit more. But the comic book prices of 2021, where everything was going up like crazy, I don't think we'll ever see that again anytime soon, if ever. The prices were just not sustainable, and they've kind of come back to where they should be, in my opinion. And there's a lot of really good deals on comic books right now, CGC 9.8s or whatever you collect, 9.6s, that if you are a key issue Star Wars comic book collector in high grade, now's a really good time to be getting them because the market is way down and very, very flat. So I'm going to kind of be strategic about it. I've gone on record saying I'd like to get a Star Wars 42 in a 9.8. I think now's a pretty good time to get that. Prices are about half of where they have been, but it's going to take a lot of financial discipline and a lot of saving up and probably a lot of selling of stuff that I can't keep in order to pay for that. And I don't know if that'll happen or not, but there's some other secondary keys I'd like to get both within the vintage Marvel run as well as from the Dark Horse era. That there's just some really good books out there, and I think now's a really good time to look at them. Next up, he says, the TDH 1972, what's your favorite series of Star Wars trading cards? I think that's pretty evident from my collection and my unboxings. I really like the customizable card game cards. The prices for those are way down, 50 to 75% down. I like how they present. It's kind of a Pokemon for Star Wars. And I like the challenge of trying to get high grades for those. It's very, very challenging to get PSA 9s and 10s with those because there's so much that can go wrong with them. They have black borders, some of them. There are some white border cards. So I like the challenge of sending in pack fresh cards, but even pack fresh, they can come back as PSA 7s. That's what I've found. So I really like the CCG cards. I really like the vintage Topps cards, obviously, and I also like the living set. Those are my big three that I'm trying to stay with. I'm not going to branch out into other lines because I think it's important with trading cards. There's just so much out there to pick one or two or three lines that you really like, and those are the three lines I like. So the vintage Topps cards, specifically the ESB cards, the CCG cards from Decipher from 1995 to about 2000, and then the living set, which is ongoing right now. Next up, what do you think of the vintage Star Wars Horde that is coming up on Don Murphy's action figure auctions? So here it is right here, Dan Murphy, excuse me. There were a number of vintage mint on cards that were like a warehouse find, all case fresh, all super, super mint, and they're going up for auction on auctions.morphyauctions.com starting February 1st through the 3rd. And they are some gorgeous, gorgeous items. Right now there's online bidding, but I, for the life of me, cannot figure out how to register for these for the bidding process online. But keep in mind that the online bidding is going to stop 15 minutes prior to the live bidding. So I think it's going to be really tough to bid on some of these if you're not going to be present, because I think the online bidders, or excuse me, the live bidders are going to have a big price advantage over online bidders, since the online bids will stop 15 minutes prior to the live bidding starting February 1st through the 3rd. Again, I'll include a link to this if you want to check out the inventory. It's a number of beautiful items, clear blisters, a lot of them for Return of the Jedi cards. There's a lot of Empire Strikes Back cards, 12 and 20 and 21 backs. Beautiful, beautiful items. But I'm not going to bid on them because I can't figure out how to register on their website. I've tried 3 or 4 different times to log in my credit card, to use a username and password, and it just spits me back out again saying, sorry, it doesn't allow me to bid. So I don't know. There's something wrong with their website. I just can't figure it out for the life of me, and that's okay. I don't really particularly want to bid on anything. I just wanted to be able to track them for maybe a market update. But it is what it is. Finally, Cranky Rancor, he says, how do you keep your hair so shiny? Well, let me tell you how I keep my hair so shiny. I get old, all right? You too will get old one day, and you'll start to lose your hair like I have. I keep mine very close to the head because I don't have a lot of hair. I'm going bald. I'm starting to have a receding hairline, as you can see here, and that's okay. Once I finally go completely bald, I'm just going to use a straight razor on it. I'm going to be like Mr. Clean, you know, the logo for the cleaning solution where he's got a big bald head. That's going to be me one day, and I'm okay with it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.